Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far, with Major 4 on the horizon and the World Championship not too far away. OpTic are releasing a video series where Scump interviews many of their players over the coming weeks. In his Talk vs Pred, many interesting things were discussed. Certainly on Nadeshot back in the day, there's been a bit of friction between Nade and Pred over the last couple of days, but also various other things, certainly in terms of what it's like to play for OpTic. And even Dashy says that when he potentially isn't playing for OpTic anymore, at whatever point that will be, whether he can even play for another team again, based on just how good it is to play for the Greenwall. Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, this is a big talking point yesterday. The average age of CDL teams. Any surprises? So here we go. These are the average age of the teams. The youngest is Los Angeles Thieves. Now, you know, this is usually what you'll tend to see. The youngest teams maybe 21, 22 in that kind of ballpark. But, you know, the average age of a player is 23.6, which kind of makes you feel a little bit old because, you know, I turned 25 recently, and that's older than the average every single team in the league, apart from Graced's team. And as you didn't even notice this until now, we've got Graced in the bottom right hand side, who's you know, how old's Clay again, like in his 60s. That obviously brings the average up. I'm just joking, but anyway, the AR duo I think averages out at something like 30 basically. The AR duo averages like 30, so almost that brings the averages up. Gwyn is pretty young. TJ is actually not that much older than Gwyn. I think TJ turns 25 this year maybe. Still incredible like how young TJ is to me, given the fact that he's been around forever. Like, I know I mentioned this before, but there's this clip that you can find on YouTube of Nameless clutching a 1 vs 4 and Express Search and Destroy way back in Black Ops 2. And he's playing TJ on the other team, and like Huskers or something like that anyway. And Huskers now Warzone guy, but TJ's on the other team, and he can't be more than like 11 years old. But he's playing in Search Trials against pros, and TJ's just been around forever. Interesting that OpTic are kind of like on the higher side here now. I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like, Dashy is, I think he's 25 now, even though it kind of feels like he's been around not that long. Kind of feels still new gen Dashy, but in some ways maybe not. Boston are at 24 as well, because I think Beans is, like, I know Beans is kind of new, but it's not like he's an absolutely really young rookie that's just come into the league. Same with aBeZy in some ways, that, you know, there's a few rookies who've had over the last couple of years that aren't 18 and cracked. They might be, you know, 21, 22, 23 and coming into the league. And I think that's cool to see. And I know that it may make some of the team wonder about longevity and all this stuff. You know, I don't really see the argument there because we've seen what some of the boys on Ravens are doing. But yeah, the average is pretty low for some of the teams, maybe expected. But FaZe, Ultra, OpTic and New York, the teams that are the best four, they're all in a very close proximity to each other. So I don't know if there's anything in that necessarily, but it is interesting to think that the best teams in the league are all average ages at about 23 and a half, 24. So, you know, but obviously FaZe are going to continue being like the best team, and they're only just going to get older from here. And, you know, it's not like FaZe are old. Like, let's be real about this. But like, you know, it wasn't long ago that it felt like, oh, the FaZe team is super young, right? Whereas now, you know, they've been around a long time at this point. So now they're kind of middle of the pack, I suppose, in terms of average age. Not like it should really matter, but you know, there are some things here. This makes you feel old as well. 65% of players were born after the year 2000. Some players were born here in like 2004, 2005, which like just feels outrageous. But yeah, only 17 players in the league were born in the 90s. So yeah, pretty funny, isn't it? Clay at 32, accuracy nearly at 28, Attach and Fellow in the 27s. So that's kind of how that's working out. And yeah, these are the youngest players in the league. No 18-year-olds actually. Snoopy, Joe Deceives, Linz 04, still 19 for now. But thought that was pretty interesting, to be honest. Couple of talks as well on what we're expecting here from the tryout game. What do you guys think about what the third game mode should be? It's always a discussion point. I'm sure it's going to continue when the off-season comes around. We have had hardpoint search and destroy now for some time. Unfortunately, back in MW19, we had to deal with domination, and I never want to do that ever again. Uplink, though, is, I would say, the fan favorite mode. Lionman made this back in, you know, this is Miami, of course, in Black Ops Cold War, in terms of how you could make this work, do some sort of trampoline to the uplink portal, or do some sort of, like, you know, runway up to the uplink portal so you can throw it, but also you can run it in. People would love to see uplink back, I think, and if it works, then I would be down to see it, but I just don't know how it's going to work on boots on the ground. My kind of hot take in terms of COD is that actually I kind of like Control. I don't think it's a bad mode. It just massively depends on the maps, and I think I would kind of prefer to see Control over the Capture the Flag that has been raised for some time. if, you know, on the majority of maps, I think that's probably for the better. But would I complain about somebody trying to make uplink work properly? No, I wouldn't say that I would. There was also this from ReeaL, probably a bit of impression farming. You know what the CDL needs? Return to 5 versus 5. I don't want to go back to that ever again. I also think that by no means it would be like the one thing to change that would improve the state of the scene. It happened though during Black Ops 4, during MW19. It would create absolute chaos, to be honest, if the teams had to find somebody else to bring into their roster, but I just don't really see in all likelihood this actually happening. And I guess the risk would be that as of today's league, this potentially would only consolidate things even more at the top. But let's talk about some of the moments from this, because OpTic released yesterday, their content's been killing it lately, by the way. Everything they did after the major victory, all of the stuff they've done, this as well, the way it was put together, I thought was really, really cool. Road to Champs, Episode 1 Pred. So we've got Scump sitting down here with Pred, talking for 40 odd minutes on exactly what's been happening in his life, you know, his come up to this point, talking about various things on their performances so far this season, and of course the future as well. So of course the link will be in the description box below. Couple of clips I wanted to share, talking about the Paris Legion, a rumour that many of you guys may be aware of, but I thought I'd share anyway, talking about Nadeshot, and also just a general perspective even from Dashy on what it's like to play for the Greenwall.
But yeah, no, for me it was honestly like, I was lucky because my agent at the moment, he was helping me out. He had like team connections and stuff like that. And I was actually supposed to join Paris Legion in Cold War. It's supposed to be me, Paco, Denz, and Zed.
Yo, you and Paco, I'm no disrespect to Denz and Zed, because those are my boys. They're both nice. And they've always been good at COD. But like you and Paco, obviously, now in the league, two of the hardest hitting slayers we got.
Yeah.
That team would have been low-key scary.
It would have been like a sleeper team.
So you've seen a lot of players come and go.
Yep.
Is there anyone that you feel like you didn't get to play against that you really, really wanted to play?
Didn't get to play. Well, I wanted to play against you and Crim, which I got to. You two were definitely top 2. Believe it or not, I actually scrimmed against Damon when he was on the Seattle team. Super trolly team.
MW 2019?
Yes.
Oh,
so trolly.
Horrible.
So bad.
I don't even know how they had Sam and Damon in like Slack.
Enable, Slack,
they should have been
apathy.
They should have been decent.
Better.
I don't know what happened.
They were running default operators. That's when I knew they were dogs. I came from Australia and they ran default operators getting slams. So I haven't played Damon in like a tournament format, but honestly, there's one pro that I wish I could have played that I didn't. Like you and Crim were definitely top 2 for me. And Matt, both Matts, Nadeshot and Formal.
You want Nadeshot?
I would have loved to play Nadeshot and Formal.
I mean,
bro, I watched
Nate. You played Nadeshot, that would have been like low-key bullying.
Bully ball?
Yo, man, you might have got bullied.
I think there's nothing like it at an event, though. Nothing can match it.
Oh, yeah.
You go to an event, like people have your jersey on, people are asking for signatures. Yeah. You get on stage, people are screaming every time you get a kill. You do an insane clutch or you do an insane play. Like, it's just, you could feel it.
Yeah.
It honestly does, like, that's probably the one thing that, like, especially playing on OpTic for so long, there ain't no way, like, if I didn't play for OpTic, ain't no way I could play again. Like, it's just, like, I'm brainwashed now, I think.
Yeah. It's such a great place to be.
It's unbelievable.
It's such a great...
Because think about it, when you play on OpTic, everybody's watching, all the eyes are on you. It feels like when you're not playing on OpTic, nobody gives a shit about your match.
Yeah.
That's legit what it feels like.
So the World Championship is coming up. I will also mention, right, this year's World Championship is an entire month later. This time last year, Champs was over, by the way. Like, literally this time, like, what is it, 20th of June last year, New York Subliners were crowned the world champions, and it was a done deal. Scrappy had been, 5-0 slammed in the grand finals by Kismet, and that was it. This year, we've got a whole nother month, which is good, but of course, last year, we also had an event in the December prior, right, 2022 December. We had the ReeaL event, and then the season kicked off from there. That season was pretty congested, and Champs was really early. I think in some ways, I prefer what they've done this year, spreading it out more. But obviously the counterpoint there is that there's just been more online and less LAN. So, but I think in general, the fact that the season this year started in December with some online qualifiers and it's going to end in July, it's better than it has been. It's still not good enough in many ways. But I also wonder, right, if the Esports World Cup is going to stay in August, as it presently is, into the future years, then maybe what we are currently seeing in the CDL is going to continue, right? Because if I had to create my optimal CDL structure, I'd say, all right, the game game comes out, let's say start of November, I'd want the matches to begin, end of November, start of December at the very, very latest. At least have one event before Christmas, then have one event at the end of January, one event at the end of February, March, April, May, etc., etc. And I'd probably want to host the World Championship at least in August, if not September. Have maybe a 1 month off season, then the new game comes out and you go again. Like, that would be ideal, obviously, to have a longer season. The issue, I guess, for the league is structuring the year for next season, that there's going to be this Esports World Cup probably every year in August, I would imagine, is the plan. So then if you're the league, you say, okay, well, what do we do? Do we do the World Championship in September and have the Esports World Cup happen mid-season, but obviously during that period you'll have to not do matches and tournaments in the CDL? Or do you say, you know what, we're going to keep up with this whole Champs in July idea, so that then aligns with the Esports World Cup coming afterwards? So I do wonder what that's going to mean for the future scheduling of the league, because it may affect what many of us would like to see of an extended CDL season with just straight up more events. But at least this year it is later than last year at the very least, and we have as a result a slightly shorter off season. But Pred on the Paris Legion, this may be known to many of you guys already, but it was definitely a talking point going into the Cold War season that Pred, who was not in the league, and HyDra, who was not in the league, were both basically pitched to Legion as potential options. They eventually got into the league. HyDra did in the Cold War season. Eventually on the Subliners, Pred had to bide his time for another year until Vanguard to actually get the opportunity, and in hindsight it all worked out rather well. But this is just one of the criminal things that Paris, they didn't want to take the chance. They wanted to go down another route. And even, let's say it wasn't DenZNZ, like the team they eventually formed when Aqua was there and like Scraps was there, of course, like they had Fire 40 as well. That didn't really go to plan, right? It's kind of funny to think about in a way. Like Fire, I think, is a better player than his stint in the league shows, but it is funny to think about the fact that they could have had Pred and HyDra, and they ended up with like Fire 40 that year with one of the worst individual SMG stints of all time. Now, how would it have gone with Pred and HyDra? It would have been fascinating to see, because nowadays we picture those two as pretty similar players, and I think in some sense they are. Could they work well together? I wouldn't rule it out, of course. Like, the guys are so good, I'm sure they could make it work, and maybe their playstyles they have today would be different had they played with each other back then and kind of learned how to play off one another at the time. Would have been fascinating to think about, but of course that is not what happened. It would have been really big for Paris Legion, but yeah, fumbled the bag on that one. This was the other funny clip though, right? We saw the clip the other day where Nadeshot was listening to the OpTic podcast they did, and he was talking about how Predator Nadeshot was getting slammed in these games that I used to watch him play, the YouTube videos way back in the day, and Nate was like, nah, this guy, like, what's he talking about, right? And obviously Scump here is throwing the dagger in and saying, yeah, wow, if you played against Prime Nadeshot, or if Prime yourself in Pred played against Prime Nadeshot, it would have been an absolute bloodbath. It's, I know that obviously they're good boys, right? But if I'm Nate, I'm thinking, damn, I've been disrespected here again. And I don't think Nate would mind, but I also think from Nadeshot's point of view, he's always kind of shown publicly that, he wishes maybe he had a bit more respect for the championships he won for OpTic, because everyone talks about the dynasty when Karma came in, and even Enable slightly before that, but people kind of forget about the fact that OpTic, when Nadeshot won, was it not 3 back-to-back events before the World Championship in Advanced Warfare with Nadeshot on the team? And of course they did well in Ghost as well, all things considered. So, I don't know if it's super clear-cut that Pred of today, obviously, like, from a pure individual skill perspective, the debate is where Scump probably indicates that it is, but I think Nadeshot was a better player than people give him credit for in hindsight, to be honest. But also what Dashy had to say, Pred said a similar thing in that show as well, about that when you play for OpTic, it's just such a different experience to playing for another team, that it becomes rather a challenge to picture yourself playing elsewhere, saying that, like, when he was on Surge, a very different story. For Dashy, he's kind of not really known outside of OpTic. Yes, he was on OGLA briefly, he was on Straight Rippin' briefly back in Infinite Warfare before he got signed to OpTic, basically straight away after the next season. Okay, Straight Rippin', he was on Complexity, so Dashy kind of knows what it's like, but once he's joined OpTic, he's never really looked back since then. And I don't really take Dashy's word at face value, in the sense that, let's say OpTic struggle from now to the end of the season, they decide to move on from Dashy, maybe Formal comes back, I don't know, like, just hypothetical, Scrappy comes in or something. Like, if Dashy at some point is out of OpTic, will he just retire? Because that was kind of the implication of what he said, that he's like, well, I don't want to play anywhere else but Optic because it's so good. So kind of might just call it a day at that point. Will that actually happen? I don't really think so. But it is interesting to kind of just hear the perspectives on what the players have to say when they play for the Greenwall. Just one final thing to mention before we close out the video here. This I thought was kind of wild. These are the guys that Atlanta FaZe will always slam every time they've played them. And this is a list of players that are effectively winless against Atlanta FaZe. So number one is Thomas Halley, TJ Halley. He's played FaZe, Atlanta FaZe, 18 times, and he's lost every single time. So literally 0 in 18. His map win percentage, by the way, against FaZe is 17%. Like, let me just make that clear. 11 map wins, 54 map losses against Atlanta FaZe, TJ. So we're talking the Boston days, we're talking the Vegas days, we're talking now the Ravens days, and even before that on Thieves, let's say, back in Cold War briefly. That's pretty ugly. Shawnee's here as well, but obviously he's played fewer series. Capsule is here. Like, it's incredible just how many players that FaZe just demolish, like, bad. Even Donny Temp, 0 in 13. Paul X, 0 in 7. Scrap, 0 in 8. Aqua, 0 in 5, and even Felony here. But very much interested your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.